Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, the show that brings you weekly news and advice at the beginning of every weekend. Introducing first, your co-hosts, Mack, Mark, Scott, and Lando. Are back with another Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast coming to you today, Saturday, August 17th, episode 66. We're talking NFC South preview today, the most volatile division in fantasy football, the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, and the high-flying Tampa Bay Bucs. Yes, it's crazy to say. We are still without Mark, but I've got Scott and Landon here with me. We're ready to bring it to you on this Saturday morning. It's a beautiful Saturday. Boys, how's your week been?
Hey guys, my week has been excellent. Just a point of reference, we tried to record this episode once already, but it's a late on a Friday night. We are up to date with all the news and notes, and we are ready to rock. Scotty, my man, have you had a good week?
Oh, it's been a long one, but had some just prime preseason football to keep me entertained through it all. I tell you, if the preseason mattered, man, Mike Glennon would be going in some first rounds, because watching him in Oakland, it was some fun.
Adrian Peterson, Kyler Murray would be undrafted. It would be another world.
What a weird world you live in the preseason. I had a blast watching Doug Martin and Glennon on the same field, same offense once again.
Circa 2012.
Absolutely.
Look, wherever you guys are, however you may be listening to us, we want to thank you for making us a part of your day. So whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, thanks so much. The fantasy bug has hit. I was at the golf course late tonight, which is potentially a reason why we're recording so late, but I was talking with the guys. Fantasy just got stuck, and it was great, man. It's nice to have fantasy football, the topic of conversation back in the air. The buzz is definitely there, and the season's right around the corner. We are actually drafting our listener league tomorrow, Sunday, August 18th at noon. So look for a YouTube video coming out with that. It's going to be great. If you do want to catch up with the show, we are on Instagram and Twitter at SMS_fantasy. If you want to get the boys' individual handles, those are in the episode description. So go ahead and get at them there. If you've been following us on social, you will see that we are doing a Madden 20 giveaway. So we've got it for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's contest rules on all of those platforms. So go ahead and like the posts, comment on them, tag some friends, retweet, however you want to get involved. That will get you one entry per action, and then you can gain 3 entries for subscribing to the podcast and 10 entries if you support the show on Patreon. So patreon.com/Saturday Morning Snap. Go over there. It's just $5. You get access to all of our premium resources like rankings and extra shows and so on. So some incentive there to get involved with the show, no doubt.
Yeah, I want to shout out Eric for being a patron.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Appreciate it, my man. You always have a direct line to us. And any questions, concerns, questions about the rankings you might have, we're an open book. We want to make it better. I'm super psyched about our draft this week. I know there's some pretty tough competition. Shout out to all the boys in their listener league. So far, it's been super active, very intuitive. Everyone's been asking questions, answering questions on our chat. So maybe next year, if you're interested in doing a sleeper listener league draft, make sure you give us a shout, and maybe you can make the cut.
It's funny, man. I play in 6 money leagues. This is the only free league that I'm going to be playing in this year, and this is the one I want to win the most because it's going to be so competitive, and it's going to be the hardest. It's going to be the hardest league to win because our dirty laundry's been aired. Everybody knows the guys that we like and where our rankings are. So game on, man. Like I'm pumped.
Absolutely. Let's go, boys. Let's go.
Scotty, you got a little bit of news to share with us, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks to all our fans giving us reviews and leaving just the kindest of words. We have been climbing the official Apple Podcast rankings. Woo! And currently we have climbed to number 13 in fantasy sport podcasts in all of Canada. That's just 3 outside of the top 10, and I think that's pretty exciting, and it's all thanks to the fans.
Let's go. Okay, if we make it into the top 10, fellas,
God.
I will give out my personal number.
No,
in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I will draft by your side. I will do whatever it takes. Answer your questions. Give me a call anytime, day or night, and I will answer your keeper questions,
that
draft
might be
questions.
More of a disservice.
Let's get it. Boys.
Ladies, those are a very valuable 10-digit combination right there. So
listen,
the Patreons are going to go through the roof.
In light of this fantastic news, top 10 is coming, I would say very soon, hopefully. We wanted to go through and read one of the glorious reviews left for us. So it was a 5-star review, left us some feedback. It was from Wakefield MB. This was left last week. Captioned, stirred my emotions. A well-crafted feast for the ears that's remarkably insightful considering these guys are Canadians. Ooh, shots. The information is in-depth and presented in a way that I can easily break down into bite-sized pieces while hanging around in my underwear. It's a casual show that lets me feel as if I'm chilling with 4 pantless bros shooting the breeze dishing on some pigskin. It's a wonderful way to begin my weekend free of the slacks of oppression I'm forced to wear 5 hellish days a week. The Saturday morning snap crew is an essential and liberating part of this ritual. Starting my Saturday with a strong cup of black coffee, dry scrambled eggs, and buttered, slightly burnt toast stirs things inside me that I haven't been stirred since I discovered the internet 4 years ago. This year-round delight keeps me warm in the dog days of winter when I'm forced to clad myself in pants to prevent my precious leg hairs from freezing off. Nothing keeps me on top of my game like football in February. While I've never come close to winning any of my 17 leagues, I feel like this is the year. Because of SMS, I finally have a chance to reveal my full glory to the world. Thank you, Saturday Morning Snap. Thank you, Wakefield MB. What an unbelievable, what an unbelievable review. Slow clap.
That gets a slow clap for sure.
Unbelievable. Unfrickin' believable.
Oh, well written. Just so
well, Mr.
So
Wakefield.
Heartfelt.
I truly hope it's your year. And I have a disturbing visual in my head right now, but we'll make the best of it.
I'm not even
Hopefully
sure that
he's protecting the leg hair.
I'm not sure we're worthy of that pedestal, but we sincerely appreciate it. With that being said, let's jump into some news. So the the Antonio Brown saga has somewhat come to a close here. Essentially, he has declared that he's coming back to practice. Hasn't practiced yet, but came back with his agent. He's essentially said that with the whole helmet issue, basically the league put out new guidelines and regulations for helmets, and his helmet was not approved anymore. So he had to basically put on a new helmet or not play football. He was putting up a fuss. Has since seen an arbitrator. They've said you can't use your old helmet. He said, whatever, I guess I'll return. And so he's come out with some crazy requests that if you can find a shoot helmet of his style made after 2010, he'll give you a Raiders signed helmet of your choice. So pretty crazy.
That was posted early this week. I don't know if there's an update yet on that, but
I mean, someone's going to get that helmet for him.
He didn't play in the preseason game.
Apparently he's been flooded with them. One of them has to be in there, but then they have to actually test it and process it, and they'll probably have to refinish it, kind of.
Look, right. the news here is that Antonio Brown's gonna be back and playing football. His feet look to be healing from that frostbite, second-degree frostbite, pretty solidly. And right now, his ADP is 301. That's an absolute steal. So if you can get Antonio Brown late second, early third, I think that is just gold. So take advantage of this ADP while it lasts. So if you're drafting now, you're going to get a discount on Antonio Brown. If you're drafting first week of September, you might have to pay like early second round price. So now's the time to get AB.
I watched him doing some warm-up routes there before the preseason game, and he looked solid. He looked
really
strong.
fast.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
We're discounting AB so far, but as for someone that probably should be discounted, Golden Tate's appeal was denied. He will be serving a 4-game suspension, so I believe that's a huge boost to Evan Ingram. He's been looking great in camp, and I guess Cody Latimer would be the de facto replacement. Sterling Shepard, he could play week 1 with that thumb injury, but he could still miss a week or 2 depending on how it heals.
Right.
And rounding up injury news, the oldest story ever told, Andrew Luck now has a small little bone aggravating the tissue in his upper ankle area, unknown as to time of return. So, as is tradition at this time of year, every year it seems, what risk does Andrew Luck carry going into the season? He currently has an ADP of 607. What do you guys think? Are we back in the category of this can sewer your season if you go too high on him?
I think I'm a little bit hands off on Andrew Luck so far.
Yeah,
Mac,
agreed.
what do you think?
Agreed. You can't take him where he's going. I think you either get Watson or Rodgers in the 5th round, or you wait. It's a little bit ugly to take Andrew Luck in the 6th if he's going to miss time. That's just wasted capital. So I'm off Andrew Luck right now.
Now, depending on how deep your bench is, if I'm playing on a short bench, I do not want to be rostering 2 quarterbacks. Now, if you have a 10, 12, 14-man bench for some reason, sure, take a flyer. He'll be good second half of the season more than likely, but it's still worth that draft capital.
Well, to me, it's the draft capital of, like Mackenzie said, you'll be right in the range of those Rodgers, quarterbacks that are basically plug and plays every week. You use up that capital, and then at the tail end, you're going to have to use more capital on, some sort of streaming quarterback who's probably barely a backup. And you might get to that midway point of the season, and sure, you have the roster spot, but you might be so far down in the playoff chase that Luck would have to come back so on point to get you even into the wild card.
One small piece of news before we move on here. Josh Gordon has been reinstated for football. He applied for reinstatement. It has been granted. In half-point leagues, his ADP is 1204. He's the 144th player off the board. That could be a home run ball that you hit late in drafts. So Josh Gordon in the 12th, 13th round in your fantasy leagues, if you're drafting in the near future, that might be a guy to take a flyer on.
How do you think this affects your N'Keal Harry stock, Mac?
I'm still good with it. They played totally different positions. Yeah.
All right.
I'm good. Talking about our listener league, we wanted to welcome in Jason, Turk822, and Adam, Tron Swanson. These two boys help round out our league, get us to a solid 12. We're excited to have you. We know that both of you are going to make this league as competitive as can be. The chat the last couple days has just been absolutely lit. You boys are just firing us up. The draft is tomorrow. So look, I think we're all super excited. It's going to be great, and it's going to be live on Sleeper noon. So we'll see you there.
Let's go.
All right, boys, jumping into the NFC South tonight, I think one of my favorite divisions for fantasy football. We're going to start off with the New Orleans Saints, probably the favorites to win this division. We got a star-studded lineup: Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. Can I say any more? Not to mention Jared Cook coming over. Where do you want to start with this team?
I'll start with the obvious option in Alvin Kamara. He is the number one running back on that team. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to take AK as the number one pick overall.
Agreed.
There's always concerns with Saquon Barkley, maybe the shoulder of Cam Newton, but you're not concerned about Drew Brees and how he can get those running backs the ball. So I don't need to talk much about that. He's a great player. He catches the ball. But Latavius Murray, he just doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. I don't end up on him on any of my teams, and I'm really not sure why. Can someone talk me into drafting Latavius Murray? He's going at the 701. He's our 34th ranked running back, but he's a guy that just feel I'm not going to win a league if I draft Latavius. Who's got comments on that for me? Come on.
I'd say that at best he'd be a handcuff, just looking for Kamara to get injured.
He's more than a handcuff, though.
I don't think there's any way that you actually trot him out in a 2 running back league as a starter and expect to win your week, personally. But
Mack, you must think otherwise.
I wholeheartedly do. I mean, there's only been one player that's been better than Mark Ingram over the last 4 seasons. That's been Latavius Murray. He's actually ahead of Mark Ingram in yards and touchdowns. So Latavius Murray is a perfect Mark Ingram replacement. And when you look back 2 seasons ago when Kamara and Ingram first sort of made their tandem known, they finished as the running backs 3 and 6. So there is a world where those guys could finish top 10, both of them. I'm not saying that Latavius Murray is going to come and do what Mark Ingram did, but he is the same caliber player, if not better. So he does fit this style that New Orleans Saints want to run. And I think going in the 701 spot, the 7th round, he's going to be fantastic. We don't have him necessarily statted out to be that, but I think where we have him represents his absolute floor, and the ceiling could be a lot higher. So I do like Latavius Murray, especially if you get Alvin Kamara in the 1st round. Sure him up with Latavius Murray in like the 7th round. I think that's a great option.
That's interesting, because I actually am more of a fan of Mark Ingram with Kamara in that backfield, just based on their their stature and playing style. But it will be interesting to see what happens this season. You may very well be right.
Mm-hmm. They also have Divine Ozigbo, and he is a rookie player coming into this offense. I don't see much of a role for him, neither with Buck Allen, but they are 2 insurance policies, to say the least. But it's going to be a Latavius Murray, Alvin Kamara show.
So I want Mack to talk about Michael Thomas, but first, Scotty, do you have any interest? I think there's so much football to go around still in this offense because Drew Brees is so efficient with the ball. Are you drafting any of the wide receivers? And if so, who are you looking at? And then next, I want Mack to talk about if Michael Thomas has the upside to be that top 3 in conversation with the top 2 wide receivers.
Well, I won't spend any time on Michael Thomas then, as he's obviously locked and loaded on that new contract. Tre'Quan Smith is one. I believe I actually I had him in an article I wrote about a month ago as one of the wide receivers that I do think is worth the draft capital and could emerge as a real option this year in fantasy. So as far as the remaining wide receivers that's not named Michael Thomas, I'd definitely take a look at Tre'Quan Smith.
Mm-hmm. Michael Thomas.
So Matt, we both know that Thomas was hyper efficient.
Yep.
What do you see him doing this year?
I mean, you're looking at an offense that has year over year declined in passing attempts and increased in rushing attempts. They basically went from a top 5 passing offense to a lower 10, and now they're in top 5 for rushing. So Michael Thomas just was crazy efficient last year, 85% catch rate. The next best in the league was like 72. So he's head and shoulders better than anybody else in the league. And that's just not going to project forward. There's going to be some positive regression happening there. Now, we have Michael Thomas ranked as our 7th wide receiver, and we're still projecting him to get about 140 targets. I'm going to temper expectations and say, yeah, he's probably one of the most sure-handed wide receivers in the game. His true catch percentage is like 92%. But when you look at how tight the balls coming his way from Drew Brees there is an expectation for that catch percentage to be higher. So when you give him 140 targets and we downgrade him to 75%, which would still be the best in the league, comes out to 105 receptions. So he falls in the wide receiver 7 category. I just think with how much the Saints run the ball, I can't get Michael Thomas any higher than 7 in our rankings. So I think he's going to be a fantastic option. I like his draft spot right now in the beginning of the second round, but I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 receiver.
Michael Thomas or Julio Jones?
Depends on the league that I'm playing in.
Half point per reception.
Julio Jones.
Julio. Michael Thomas or Juju?
Juju.
Ooh. Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham?
That one's close. That one's like right on the line. I think the difference we have between them is 3 points on our projections. So you could side either way. That would be preferential to me.
If you had to pick one.
I'll take the upside on Odell.
Hey, there we go. All right, Scotty. How do you feel like about Jared Cook? We have him ranked as our top 12 tight end. Do you like his draft stock? He's kind of going in the middle of drafts right now.
Yeah, Jared Cook's an interesting one as he's kind of getting on the older side of where you want them to hover around 30, but he will be Drew Brees' locked and loaded tight end, and we all know that can be a great position to be in. So, I do have him on one of my teams, and I do really believe that he can replicate what he did last season. There is a lot more hands to catch the football on, obviously, the New Orleans Saints, and the run game is far more impressive. Mm-hmm. So I'd say he's probably set for a bit of a decline just because his stats were so good last year. But I still think you'll get your value if you take Jared Cook.
Is he a sell high candidate to you? You own him in Dynasty. He's probably not going to be in the league for another so many years, and he's now on an offense with Drew Brees. Do you try to put him out on offers right now and try to get max value for what Jared Cook is, or are you just going to hold and hope you can really get some final value out of him?
I think it really depends on your situation. I mean,
how about your situation?
My situation, I have a decent amount of tight ends, but really I'll be looking for somebody to lose their tight end early on in the season, probably to injury, and then he's a good candidate to float out in front of them to try to shore up one of my other positions. And also I kind of need to see, how does Delaney Walker do, right? How is Greg Olsen, going to just hop back in the broadcast booth? These are all questions I need to try to get an answer on.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to talk
Mack,
before we depart from this team about Drew Brees.
How did I forget about Brees of all guys?
Right. Going around fantasy football Twitter, there's a lot of buzz about Drew Brees, a lot of top 10, top 12 rankings coming out right now. And some have Drew Brees in the top 5, and some don't have Drew Brees in the top 12. And we sort of sit in that camp where Drew Brees is going to be outside the quarterback 1 realm. And I know it's crazy. You think you got AK-41, you've got Latavius Murray, Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Jared Cook, all these weapons. How can Drew Brees not be a quarterback 1? A lot of people will project him to be there, but here's where I have the issue. He's our quarterback 15 based on some of the trends that we've seen in this offense. This is no longer the Drew Brees that passes for 625 plus attempts anymore. He had a run of 7 years where he was over 625 with a high of 673. That's no longer the case. 2017, 536 attempts. 2018, 489. And year over year, his completion percentage is going up. And that helps when you have a receiver that catches 85% of his balls. So Drew Brees has been building his fantasy value on efficiency. Last year, he threw for less than 4,000 yards. He hasn't done that since 2005. So that's crazy. His touchdown rate, 6.5%. He hasn't done that since 2012. So we saw a lot from Drew Brees last year. He was also sacked 20 times less than the year before, than 2 years ago. Drew Brees is not going to be a quarterback 1 based on the lack of passing volume, but also we didn't have Baker Mayfield for a full season. We didn't have Carson Wentz for a full season. We didn't have guys like Kyler Murray in the league who are mobile. Drew Brees is not mobile. He's not going to get you with his legs. So that's where in fantasy football now you're losing a lot of fantasy value. So for those reasons, lack of volume, lack of mobility, Drew Brees, albeit very efficient, very safe, I don't want to roll him out to be a QB1.
I think that's fair. I think there's still going to be in your work leagues and the leagues that aren't listening to the fantasy football drafts, people will still take Drew Brees very high because of the name recognition and the offense, and they know a couple of people, and they saw Michael Thomas get a huge contract this year, and they still have Alvin Kamara. But you make a strong argument, Mac, and I, for one, am not going to have Drew Brees on any of my fantasy teams.
He's going the first pick of the 7th round, and that's another spot I just don't want him for what he's going to return to you. So we'll move on from there. So Atlanta Falcons, this team is it's a top 5 passing offense. We love this team because, like Landon has said off camera, there's so little in terms of fantasy options here. So you've got Matt Ryan at the helm, probably going to project to be a top 10 quarterback. Devonta Freeman back and healthy. Tevin Coleman has left the offense. In comes Ito Smith. We'll talk a little bit about him. Julio Jones is obviously the diamond in the rough here. Calvin Ridley, sophomore player, probably projecting for a little bit of a breakout this year. Mohamed Sanu, probably no longer relevant, and Austin Hooper is an interesting option at tight end. So I'm going to flip this to Scott. Where do you want to start on this offense, pal?
You know what? As opposed to last team, let's go ahead with Matt Ryan. Let's talk quarterback first this time.
Love it. Landon, go ahead, pal.
Yeah, Matt Ryan, the consolidated targets on this team is excellent, and there's so many good pass catchers. As long as Devonta Freeman's healthy, he's going to be a really good pass catcher out of the backfield. Ito Smith should project to do better. I'm still not going to take him in fantasy leagues. He's more of a year 3 guy for me. Julio Jones, he could have an insane amount of yards. He will have he should have some of the most receptions in the league. If you're in any sort of PPR league, he's an absolute just machine. I don't care how many touchdowns he scores. It's all about the receptions. Calvin Ridley, he will be the incumbent to Julio Jones, is another possession guy. He's from Alabama, just like Julio. He's got Julio to learn from and look up to. I do, unlike you, Mac, I think Mohamed Sanu does carry some value, especially in deeper leagues, just with how much they throw the ball. So the Matt Ryan, where he's going at the back of the 6th round, I would much prefer him over Drew Brees. If it's in that ugly zone and there's keepers and you're really not sure who you want, I would really be safe in taking Matt Ryan in fantasy leagues. It's still a bit early for me. I would prefer to wait until you can't anymore. But if you're just in a shallow league or anyway, you can't go wrong with Matt Ryan, in my opinion, because of those weapons I mentioned, those wide receivers. This team is great. I love the Falcons. I think they're set for a really big fantasy year once again.
Yeah, the reasons why I love Matt Ryan, he's in a top 5 passing offense. They attempted 608 passing plays last year. That was number 3 in the NFL. They also had 78 red zone attempts. That's number 9. So when you get a guy that throws the ball that much, it means great things for his weapons around him. Calvin Ridley is going to be a breakout this year. I know you're saying, Mac, he was a breakout last year. Yes, but he was very volatile. He had 2-3 touchdown games and a lot of duds in between. So I think you're going to see a lot more consistency out of Calvin Ridley. I have a lot of confidence drafting him. Julio Jones is going to be fantastic. I leaned on him earlier because the volume's going to be there. He'll be a lock for like 1,300 plus yards. So Matt Ryan's great. We have him projected for 589 attempts and 30 plus touchdowns. and it makes sense with this team. I just think with Devonta Freeman coming back, it only makes sense that they'll try to run the ball a little bit more. But one guy I find myself getting in a lot of drafts, Austin Hooper, an absolute value right now in fantasy football drafts. I'm getting him, in like the 12th, 13th round alongside like Mark Andrews as another streaming play. He finished as the tight end 7 last year. So when you're paying 13 round value, you can drop him if things don't work out. But why I think things will work out, Austin Hooper, when they got to the red zone, 78 attempts, he saw 16% of those end zone targets and almost 18% of red zone targets. So he is a huge weapon in the end zone. And he had 9 red zone receptions last year, number 6 for tight ends. So I think he proves to be very valuable in the red zone and a scoring options for the Falcons who like to pass the ball. So I have full confidence in the Falcons this year, especially Austin Hooper and Matt Ryan. It's a stack that I'm going to look to get in as many leagues as possible. It's one of my favorite.
I just don't feel that nice drafting Hooper. I tend to totally agree with you, Mac, on Hooper. I really do like him. It doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies like an Evan Ingram does or OJ Howard. But Scotty, if you had to draft one player from the Falcons based on ADP, who do you like the most and who do you see yourself drafting in most leagues?
At this point, Mack's talking me up a lot on the value play of a Hooper in the 12th round, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, Julio Jones at 112. Of course, I want Julio Jones, but everybody wants Julio Jones, and it would depend who is kind of surrounding him. But those deep value plays on a team like Atlanta with Ryan slinging the rock, something more along that play. Ridley holds a bit of intrigue for me, I'll admit, because it's that classic case of wide receiver on one side that everybody knows that they need at least the double coverage. So you can hope that Ridley has a bit of a breakout year as the single covered wide receiver on the opposite side lining up. So I think on this team, I'd probably look more for the Hooper and the Ridleys, and who knows how Freeman will do with the passing offense the way it is.
Really quickly before we go here.
Yep.
In Atlanta, we've seen a 2 running back set have a lot of success with Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman was like the greatest handcuff in fantasy football because he had standalone value. Does the same narrative exist with Ito Smith, a sophomore player in 2019?
I don't think so. I think the best is as just a pure handcuff. We know that Devonta Freeman has health and injury concerns, so that would be the only value. That's why I don't think that I like to take Ito Smith. I don't want to handcuff right away unless I see a little bit more upside in like an incumbent rookie per se. So I think he's just going to be, when Freeman goes down, he'll be the hot waiver wire guy. If you own Freeman, I don't blame you if you have a deep bench, but he's just not one of those guys I'm looking to take on any of my teams.
Right.
You'll drop him. After a big week 1 on a wide receiver that no one's heard of, you're going to just drop Ito Smith and grab that new wide receiver, new hotness.
Cool. All right, guys, very quickly before we jump into the last 2 teams here, we want to talk briefly about one of our partners this year. It is Fanatic. So the guys over at Fanatic have been doing a lot of great work to try to get data, very important fantasy data, to you that you can have at the tip of your fingers all day long. So if you want to stay ahead of your league mates and get that edge, download the Fanatic app today. That's FANATIQ. It has everything that you need all in one spot. And what we really like about this app is that it pulls a lot of very relevant information from a variety of sources. So if you want to find out, what's going on in the NFL, you can get it from a variety of perspectives, such as beat reporters, industry analysts, partners like ourselves and the Fantasy Whisperers and the Draft Room Pods, but also team feeds. So you can get multiple perspectives on the same storyline. So I really think that's a valuable asset. And they're coming out with a lot of different things like They just integrated with their newest update metrics on fantasy points per touch, which I think is great. So once again, go on iOS only, FANATIQ on the App Store today. Go ahead and get it.
Mackie, we were working today on getting on YouTube and getting our handsome mugs on the web. I think that's when we're really going to get up to that top 10 is when people see how cute and handsome Scotty is.
Yeah, it's not gonna be because of me and you, buddy.
Oh, it's the nicest thing I've heard all week. You know what? I'll take it.
Yeah, you'll take it.
Look, Carolina Panthers project to be a very exciting team, but also a little bit risky. We've got some, I guess you can say, concern with Cam Newton and his health right now. I think that's where we'll start with this team. Cam Newton is our quarterback 14 right now. I think that is his absolute floor if he plays a full season. I think he has, because of his mobility and how good he is. I mean, he's been a fantasy MVP multiple times. He could be a top 5 quarterback. I think that is the ceiling for him. His average draft position is 902 right now, second pick of the 9th round, which I think is a steal. Are you guys in on Cam Newton, or is his health concerns keeping you away?
I'm personally warming on Cam. I was concerned early. I did not want to touch him because I saw that shoulder just fail last year at the end of the season. But he had surgery, same as Andrew Luck, and he's actually progressed quicker than Andrew Luck, and we saw how he did last year. I'm personally now fully in on Cam. I feel good about it. Scotty, are you feeling the same sentiment towards Cam as I am, or are you still a little bit concerned?
I'm still concerned. I would not feel necessarily bad about slotting him in as my quarterback, but shoulder injuries for quarterbacks, especially ones getting a little more up there in age, like Cam, I don't know that I'd really feel comfortable to give up the draft capital on him early. I mean, 902 is, it's pretty reasonable for a quarterback, and he does have a bit of mobility left for sure, but he's getting a little older, closer to that 30, and I don't know if he's going to bounce back from that shoulder injury the way you seem to think he will.
Yeah, I'm also warming on Cam just because of his average draft position of 902. I think that is an absolute steal. If it doesn't work out, fine. I can drop Cam. I can go out and get myself probably like a Mitchell Trubisky off the waiver wire who's going to project to be quite good this year. In all honesty, as much as I don't want to say that, our rankings just have him higher. Yeah, because he's so mobile. He likes to run a lot. I mean, that projects really well for fantasy. Cam Newton possesses that as well. I understand the health concerns, but if I get myself like a Christian McCaffrey or a Curtis Samuel or a DJ Moore, that might be a pretty decent stack with Cam Newton at his current value. So we'll move on from Cam. I think Lane and I are warming on them. I understand Scott's concern. It's not for everybody, but take it as you will. I think an absolute value. Christian McCaffrey right now is going at the 103. He's also in consideration for the 101 pick. I think between Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Alvin Kamara, you do no wrong picking any one of those 3 guys. Christian McCaffrey's a stud. Will probably see over 100 targets in the passing game. He's going to get 200 plus touches on the ground. So you can chalk this guy up for 300 to 325 plus touches this year. Going to be an absolute stud once again. Don't put any doubt into that. But where we
Mack.
Go ahead.
Hold on.
What?
For all our listener league players, Christian McCaffrey
He's terrible. Bad. Let him fall.
You should let him fall to the 105. Do not draft him.
Who has the 105? Is that you?
That's me.
Shocking, yeah. So what I mean is Christian McCaffrey is absolutely terrible. I would probably take Melvin Gordon and Zeke, even with the risk factored in, over Christian McCaffrey. So it's probably Barkley, Kamara, Gordon, Zeke, and then McCaffrey. So yeah, I mean,
let's go.
Probably let him slide.
Really subtle, really subtle there, guys. Well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Thanks.
The biggest question on this team, I think, is who's the actual wide receiver 1? ADP would lean the DJ Moore side, but there is a lot of people are making the case for Curtis Samuel. So where do you guys see, Scott, where do you lean here? Samuel at the 911 or DJ Moore at the 604?
I think I'd go DJ Moore, even at 604. The guy's just got great hands, and it seems like if he puts it all together, he could be a legitimate WR1 in this league. And with the guys around him that are pushing him, I think there's going to be a lot of market share for him to capture there if he can just kind of supplant everybody and come right out of the gate showing off the skill we've seen time and time again. We know he can make those catches. He just has to really come out and establish himself as the WR1.
Give me your take, Lando.
See, and yeah, DJ was probably my favorite wide receiver last year coming out of college. But I think there's honestly like a wide receiver 1A and wide receiver 1B. And they're gonna take the targets away from each other. They're kind of like a poor man's version of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who we'll talk about a little bit later, but just not as much volume. So as much as I do like DJ Moore, I think there's a really good possibility that neither will be a wide receiver 1, or like even they're going to be like back end wide receiver 2s just at the end of the year. I mean, because they're just going to take each other's volume. There's not enough volume in that offense, in my opinion, to sustain 2 top tier guys. So with that said, I'm going to just take the value on Curtis Samuel, take a couple round value, and probably get a similar production to DJ Moore.
I am also in that camp, Landon. I know we have Curtis Samuel somewhat buried in our rankings compared to DJ Moore. We might have to look at bumping that just a little bit. I saw something out of Curtis Samuel tonight that I really, really liked. He had a pretty nice move off the line, had some good acceleration, sold the go route, came back, grabbed the ball on a curl, and then made a really nice spin move to elude the defender and picked up a solid, 6-7 yards after the catch. So I really like the value on Curtis Samuel. Again, if you take him at the back of the 9th, beginning of the 10th round, it's a guy that has a lot of upside to no cost to you. And I think, between the two, I'd rather go with the gamble on Samuel at the back of the 9th, early 10th than pay up for DJ Moore, who might not outperform Samuel by that much. So I'm good with Samuel where he's at. But again, at the end of the year, there could be like 2 wide receiver 2s on this team. I don't think either project to be a wide receiver 1 or even close, but you might end up with fringe wide receiver 2/3s with both of these guys.
Scotty, do you like our narrative, or are you still on the DJ Moore train?
I mean, it's always a good idea to try to kind of get as much value as you can when you're talking about an offense where there's no clear-cut winner, right? If you can get a guy like Samuel later in the draft and you can grab somebody ahead because of making that decision over DJ Moore, it's hard to argue with that narrative because I don't think you'll find anybody out there who will definitively say this will be DJ Moore's wide receiver locker room and he will be the WR1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I agree with your narrative as far as trying to get the value. I do just think that DJ Moore will finish the season as the WR1 there, but that doesn't mean that he's going to blow away all the other WR1s on other teams you could be taking instead.
One for one, I'm still picking DJ. Like if they were same draft capital, I'll pick DJ based on his physical ability and skill.
No question, but that's not.
If it's 1 for 1 and they've slid that far, I'd take DJ.
Right.
Of course.
Greg Olsen's the last guy I want to talk about on this team. He's being drafted in the back of the 13th round. He is currently our tight end 11, but after tight end 7, the production from these players just fall off a cliff. You can get some values on your old and busted tight ends right now, like Greg Olsen and Jimmy Graham, to name another one. My question is, what week will we see Greg Olsen in the commentator booth? Because 7. That's where this season's going.
He is the original Iron Man, though. I do have to point that out. Outside of the massive injury, he went how many seasons without missing a game? Mm-hmm. He's as tough as they come, so maybe he will have one more good season in him.
You guys reaching for Greg Olsen? You spending late round money on him, or are you just letting him fall to the waivers?
You know what? If he was available in like the last, maybe second last round, if I needed a backup, I would take a shot at him, sure.
See, I'm not taking him as a backup. I'll take him as my last, like, if I really punted the position and wanted to take a tight end with my last pick, Greg Olsen can be on my team.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to take someone else, like an OJ Howard, Njoku, I'm not going to take Greg Olsen just to back up a young, thriving tight end with an old busted one.
He's not going to make it past like
how many
7
bench
or 8
spots
weeks.
do you normally have?
No, you have more bench spots than I do. No, I mean, I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna take him as a backup. That's what I'm saying.
Look, we've outlined the upside with Austin Hooper, a guy like that who you can get in very similar spots. I would much rather have Austin Hooper than Greg Olsen. For sure.
Yeah, in their offenses, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer to go with a Matt Ryan tight end than Greg Olsen trying to stay out of broadcasting.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the most exciting team in this division, just because we are saying, man, Bruce Arians coming into this offense can maybe light a fire under some of these guys and really get the most out of them. And I think when you look at this roster outside of the running back position, it's fairly star-studded. I mean, Jameis Winston at quarterback, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans at wide receiver, and then OJ Howard, a top 5 or 6 tight end in the league, project for fantasy. It really is, there's a lot of hope for this passing offense. Let's start here with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is going a round before Peyton Barber. What is the deal with that? I mean, we have Rojo ranked running back 58, Peyton Barber running back 31, but the ADP is the opposite. We see more value in Ronald Jones. So is this just people putting too much, faith into Ronald Jones for a bounce back season? Maybe Arians being able to use him, in a perfect manner. What's the deal here? Because right now I'd rather have Peyton Barber if I'm choosing between either of them.
Yeah, that's the narrative, Mac. Everyone wants to think, similar to Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, they hope that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not waste a draft pick. So that's why they think at least they will give him an opportunity to outshine Peyton Barber. No one was that impressed with Barber. He kind of snuckily, he was a sneaky top 2 or running back 2 in the NFL last year in certain formats, and no one wants to take him again. Mm-hmm. I, for one, Mac, you and I did a mock draft today, and it was that time, and those 2 running backs were on the board, and I am gravitating towards Peyton Barber. We have him ranked higher in our rankings, and I'll go somewhere else. I'll take a Devin Singletary, and then hope that Peyton Barber gets back to me. Otherwise, I just won't take either. That's kind of that's so far what I've been doing in my mock drafts. I can't wait for Sunday to do a real draft and have a real team.
But it's going to be great.
Because it's so murky, take the later one again. Take the 1-round value on Peyton Barber. We project him to be the number 1 anyways. So that's my recommendation. That's where my heart lies. And we'll see where the season kind of plays out. Stay tuned to this team week 3 of the preseason.
Yeah.
And this is when I really wish that Mark wasn't off gallivanting in Europe, because maybe he could shine some light on this, because I wholeheartedly agree with you guys. I would take Peyton Barber at his ADP of 9-10 over Ronald Jones for sure. And I'm just curious myself as well as to why people are so high on Ronald Jones. I haven't seen anything that would make me think that. You look at their performance in the preseason game on Friday night. You've got Ronald Jones at 2 carries and 7 yards, and Peyton Barber at 2 carries for 5 yards. Not really inspiring stuff either way. So it's interesting to see Ronald Jones now as ADP is higher.
I think it's going to be another tough year for Tampa Bay running backs. I really do. And that's why I'm really, really hopeful for a guy like Chris Godwin on this offense. We have him ranked right now as our wide receiver 20. On our Patreon this week, I put out an article that was titled, "I'm All In on Chris Godwin in 2019." And part of the reason for that is their lack of run game is definitely concerning. But if you look over Bruce Arians' coaching tenure in the league as either a head coach or an offensive coordinator, in 14 seasons, Bruce Arians has had his wide receiver 1s and 2s targeted both over 100 times in 8 of those 14 seasons. So the data speaks that he likes to pass the ball a lot and feed his top 2 wide receivers. We could very well see that with this Bucs team as well, with how poor the run game is going to be and how potent this offense is. I know that Landon, you really, really enjoy a guy like Justin Watson, a high flyer that could, take the top off the defense. Brashad Perryman's in that category as well. But I just think Mike Evans is an absolute lock. He's going to be great. He could be a top 5 receiver, but I love Chris Godwin going at the 505 right now. If Bruce Arians can turn 3 different rosters, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Arizona Cardinals, back-to-back years in high-flying passing offenses, why can't he come over to the Bucs and do the exact same thing? He's a guy that is risky. His biggest slogan is no risk it, no biscuit. So he's not afraid of taking risks and winning big. And he's come out and said, I think Chris Godwin can be a 100-yard catch guy. Even Mike Evans, in a recent interview with Kurt Warner, he goes, how do you like Chris Godwin, securing the wide receiver 2 role in this league? He's like, number 2. It's Chris Godwin, man. We're competing for number 1. So I think that says a lot about Godwin, but also how good this offense can be. So I'm all in on Chris Godwin. He's going to be in high consideration for probably one of my MVPs this year.
Yeah, if you would have listened to me last year, you'd have heard the little bit of a hype I had for Justin Watson. He didn't do much, but I think year 2 is when he projects, especially in this Arians offense, to be a guy that really shows some potential. Really gets out. He's got an 88th percentile burst score. Super fast guy. 6'2", 92nd percentile catch radius. So a big target for Jameis. And just a guy, deep league again. He's not getting drafted. Just maybe take a little bit of a flyer just in case. And you can drop him after week 1 or 2 if he doesn't do anything. But just a thought. Just a thought.
And as always, a good friend to all fantasy players is a reminder that the 5-11 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, although they're very exciting for fantasy owners, what makes them also exciting is I don't see them getting predominantly better overall in their actual performance and winning games, which will have them down late a lot, which bodes well for the most valuable garbage time pickup that we all love in the fantasy world. That could see Mike Evans and Godwin and Howard just streaming down the field, trying to get that last-minute touchdown and get it within 7 or 10.
Yeah, Howard. I want to talk about O.J. Howard. Well, not me particularly. Us talk about him because he's amazing. He's an absolute freak. I love O.J. Howard. It's too bad his draft capital is at the back of the 5th round because those were good days again. I remember talking about again that he was in the late 9th round and life was good.
Yeah, I mean,
Mack.
O.J. Howard is in a tough spot. I really love him as a player. I'm not comfortable taking him in the 5th when I can get like Kittle in the 4th. Kittle and Ertz in like the 4th round right now. I think that's where I'm going to put my money at tight end. And if I don't, I'm going to wait to get the Hoopers in the 12th and 13th round. So he's kind of in that awkward stage for me, just where my drafts have gone in mocking. I don't really love my teams with an O.J. Howard or an Evan Ingram in those middle rounds. So love the player, dislike the draft cost, and that's why I'm out. But if you believe in O.J. Howard, like a lot of people do, he's our tight end 6, and you want to spend up or he falls, by all means, go ahead and grab him. I think he's going to be great. One of my favorite players on this offense to get. I get him in a lot of drafts. He's going to be our quarterback 12 this year in our rankings at the middle of the 10th round. Jameis Winston is an absolute steal, especially if you can stack him with an Evans, Godwin, or Howard. I think you're laughing with the draft capital you have to spend to get Jameis Winston.
It'll be a very interesting season for pretty much all involved with Tampa, and no matter what happens with them and their record and how they perform, I think they're going to be exciting.
Absolutely.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, listen, guys, that is the NFC South. I think that was a fantastic preview. Lots to talk about. Probably the most exciting division in football outside of, maybe a couple. Kansas City's always a good watch, but I think this division as a whole is going to be very competitive, just like the NFC North with the Packers, Vikings, Bears. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks so much for hanging with us. We enjoyed having you. And make sure you pop over to YouTube tomorrow and look for that Listener League video. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're all looking forward to this draft wholeheartedly, and hopefully you guys enjoy it just as much as we had. But, thanks again for kicking it with us. If you haven't gone and subscribed or rated the podcast, go ahead and do that now. It would mean the world to us and, help us keep climbing these rankings. So for the three of us, we'll talk to you later, and have a good week.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Good luck, all of our listeners, on our Listener League.
Yes, sir. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.